I am excited, and it's also very unfortunate that we are going to be talking about human trafficking today. I am fortunate to have specialists in this field coming here to talk about the problems of human trafficking, what we as mental health professionals and just as a culture can do to help in this space, and just to really bring some awareness to this evil and then the pain that it just cumulative throughout these individuals' lives. So Bakhita is the name of the organization. And tell us a little bit about I'll start with you, Jason, the executive director.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about the organization and its mission.
Yes, so Bakhita Mountain Home. So congrats on getting it right. Bakhita Mountain Home. It's a relatively new organization. We've been around for going on 5 years now. It was started by 2 Catholic nuns who just really saw a need for this particular field. But it's an amazing organization. We're so fortunate to be a part of it. Like you said, there's a lot of evil and things that come, but we get to see some of that better side of when people feel safe and are moving on with services and everything that we can offer. It's a 2-year residential program. Sometimes we have people stay with us for 6 months, 10 months, up to 2 years. If they need a little bit longer, we're there for them. And the number one key for us, for as far as Bakhita goes, is to have residents come in. We can have up to 5 at a time. Obviously, we're looking to grow that in the future.
Is male, female,
this is
either?
female, just female.
Okay.
Just female, and identifying as female as well.
Okay.
No children, anything like that, but that's something we hope to, get into that realm a little bit on the line. But like I mentioned, a 2-year program. They start with us, and the first thing is just to get them acclimated to the program, get used to that new normal for them of living with other people and not in a trafficking situation. And then we just work on getting them the services that they need, work on a plan to get them healthy and again, feeling safe, employment, benefits, all of those things.
Yeah.
So just a great program in general.
That I'm so excited. Yes, thank you for reaching out so that we can definitely be a service to each other. Let's back up a little bit and kind of define human trafficking. It is, we're now thankfully talking about it being a real issue. There's states where prostitution's legal, where it's not, where, how are we defining human trafficking? And from the worst case scenarios down to these ones that are they not, right? So let's start there. Who wants to start?
I'm Charlotte, and I'm the program manager at Bakhita Mountain Home. And there is a lot of misconception about what human trafficking is. And I think it just all boils down to it being 2 components, fraud and coercion.
Okay.
And
I just got bad goosebumps.
Yeah. So from my understanding, that is the national definition of what human trafficking is.
Okay. So let's talk about that coercion, because I think I think I've even been a victim of coercion sexually in my lifetime, right? Talk about that from a reality perspective for people.
So that can occur in many different situations. What a lot of people don't know is that a lot of trafficking happens familiar. And basically what that means is it's usually a family member that is having a young child to do things that they don't want to do in either labor trafficking or sex trafficking. And that can look anything from hey, we have to make ends meet and we need to pay bills. And, this is one of the ways that we can make ends meet.
Yeah.
But that can also happen in many different ways. We had a very unfortunate case when I first started, and there was a young lady who was being trafficked, and her father was a pastor of a church. And
ouch.
And she was actually being trafficked to the members of the church. And for me, that was a hard one because as a person of faith, I feel like our faith community is a safe haven for any community, and it's always been since they've been established. So to know that that type of coercion was happening even in faith communities was just heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I'm going to do a little plug for the Mentally Strong Method here, because what we do here is a psychoeducational approach where we separate these things. Obviously being trafficked is a type of trauma. And we, in the mental health profession, we know how to deal with trauma. What we're not dealing with is the spiritual conflict that obviously would occur if you had been brought up to believe in a certain faith, and then this faith but betrayed you horribly. That is going to impact your relationship with your spiritual entity until you work that out, until you wrestle with that. And so I really am adamant about kind of putting that back into mental health, that our spiritual health, and that is very evil and, like you said, very upsetting. And that's more than just the trauma. Exactly. That goes deep into our spiritual self.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we very much try to have a very holistic approach to our program. Mm-hmm. So it's not only taking care of a person physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and financially.
Mm-hmm. That's exciting. So tell us, since now the weight of the energy is very heavy right now. Share a story of success that you've had with one of the girls coming through your home.
There was a lady, and we have partnerships with different community partners within the community. And she came through our program, and she was able to get the respite that she needed. And she felt like she was in a place where she was ready for independent living. And that's a part of our program as well, is reintegration into the community. Mm-hmm. And we were able to connect with a partner organization that helped with housing. Mm-hmm. So she has been successfully living on her own independently for almost a year now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. And what kind of... what part of the program kind of instills some of that confidence in themselves for not being re-victimized? I mean, is there components of the program?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So the program is broken down into 3 phases. So the first phase is stabilization, and that can take anywhere. And I don't like to put a timeline on things because everybody heals at a different, they're at their own pace. The first phase is stabilization, and that's somewhere between 3 to 6 months. Mm-hmm. Then the second phase is restorative. Mm-hmm. And usually when someone has graduated to the restorative phase is when we start having those conversations. And that's life skills. That's a huge component of what we do, because there's a lot of life skills that are missing. Mm-hmm. And just that kind of self-worth, self-esteem, self-reflection, all those different things happen in that phase. Yeah. And then phase 3 is the reintegration phase.
Reintegration. Beautiful. Where do you get your referrals? Because I can tell you, if they end up in our office, they're not telling us they're, and oftentimes they're just not getting help while they're being victimized. Where are you getting your referrals from?
So we get them from a variety of sources. Okay. Believe it or not, we do receive a lot of referrals from the National Trafficking Safety Alliance and other partners of them as well, which is a nationwide referral source and system. Mm-hmm. So we have several people in our house right now that are from different states. So it doesn't always have to be here in Colorado. Now it's an epidemic in Colorado, unfortunately, just like it is in many other states. But we'll get referrals from them or other outside state agencies. Another huge way is our, and I'll plug it, our website, BakhitaMountainHome.org. Yep. We have on there an incredible listing of what we do, our backstory, all those different pieces. So either mental health professionals, doctors, anybody, and even victims themselves can get on there, and we have a process where they can click and fill out information, and it comes directly to us, and then we staff it, on a case-by-case basis.
And what I can assume that there's lots of referrals, and you only have 4 to 5 beds at a time.
Yes.
And it's a pretty long program.
Yes.
So what do we do with all those other people that are...
It's a fantastic question. It was one of the first ones when I started as director at Bakhita. We see anywhere, unfortunately, and this breaks my heart every time, is I see 2 to 3 referrals typically a day coming in from across the country. And, we don't have to be math whizzes to know that adds up tremendously. And we have certain pieces, so if we're full, obviously we don't have spots, but we have really changed the way we work as well to try to provide services on the front end, during, and after the program itself. And so any of these referrals that we receive in, and they may not be a good fit for our program, Charlotte and our staff work very hard to get them resources or get them connected with other places as well. We've had people just pick up the phone and call us off of our website and say, hey, I'm in this trafficking situation. What can I do about it? And our staff will call them and work with them on, hey, we don't have a spot, unfortunately, but because we don't want people to feel lost.
Yeah. How do you get funded? Where's the money coming from?
That's another great question. So some of it's grants, not a ton of grants because we're still a relatively new agency and we're collecting data.
But there is grant money.
There is
the government
money.
is giving money to this.
Definitely. So there's foundations, there's local foundation grants that are available. There's government grants. There's tons and tons of grants, but it's always, very competitive as well. So we do receive some grant funding, but most of it comes from just general fundraising. So, any events that we may have, we have Colorado Gives Day coming up. So, our year-end ask, and just spreading the word, and people typically are pretty incredibly generous to help us out because where we provide and what we need to provide the most, and it costs money, is, housing. So they don't have to worry about paying for housing, food, transportation, emergency medical services, everything. And for 5 people, that adds up very quickly. But, basically grants and fundraising are our 2 major areas where we receive funding.
And how did you get passionate about this?
So I have been a glutton for punishment my entire life. I started years ago. We lived in Arizona. I started with Child Protective Services for 5 years doing investigations. And then I was executive director for Mothers Against Drunk Driving for 11 years for Arizona and Nevada. And then I could never stand the desert. So my wife finally gave in and we moved to Colorado. And I was working in an agency in Denver for homelessness and working with homeless families. And I found out about Bakhita, and it was just a no-brainer that what an incredible cause. And I always have been passionate about working with victims. So it's something that, and then you come here and you meet the residents that we work with, and it's easy to work every day and strive to help them out as much as possible.
Yeah. What about you, Charlotte?
For me, my story is a bit different. As being a woman of faith, I'm always asking for guidance on, what I should do. I want to say about maybe 3 years ago, I had a dream I was going to be working with this population. I was like, no way. Not me. No.
So no experience in this area personally. Okay. Just knew that.
And when the opportunity presented itself, the door opened. So I believe that it's designed for me to be here. And I'm doing what I'm called to do.
Yeah. And changing lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why do you think Colorado, in this maybe factual, maybe speculation, is a hub for trafficking?
The corridor is what they refer to it every time.
Okay.
I-25 is the perfect in and out for everything. Okay. And so the latest statistics for 2023, Colorado's number 10 in the country for human trafficking, with, unfortunately, El Paso County is second to pretty much Denver, and up in that area. But the numbers are very large, and they've grown every single year. Now, I think in a good/bad way is people are feeling a little more comfortable on reporting human trafficking, or people are getting educated more, because if you remember, not too long ago, you really didn't hear much about human trafficking. And the only time I ever thought about it was, this has to be something that happens in Mexico or another country, or, something along those lines, or somebody's...
Because you think people can just call 911 and get out of it.
Absolutely. And the tricky part, and we've talked to our, we get to know our residents very greatly in their stories, and it's very heavy, but in many cases, it's shocking as a person to hear that they didn't even think they were being trafficked, or they thought it was a family member just doing what was best for them. And it's heartbreaking stories. You had asked about a story, and I remember one clear as day when I first started as, somebody that was in club sports and young and vibrant in all these areas. And then she ran into a sticky situation and a family member trafficked her. So it's just one of those things that it is big. Colorado's easy because of the I-25 corridor, basically.
Yeah. And I always think, and I'm, like you, I hear horrible stories,
Sure.
and I have adopted children who have been victim to some of these things. And I go into a women's bathroom and I always see this, call this number if you, and I always think it's not that simple. It's not that simple. Like this person is standing out there. You almost always have a relationship with this person.
Sure.
They're not, and oftentimes the guilt of some personal decisions keeps you from, actually admitting that you're being trafficked, right? Like if you took drugs or you did some things that maybe you aren't proud of. Talk to me about the psychology of human trafficking and what you have learned as you are working with these ladies.
I think it changes every time I
Think you
someone.
know it?
It's,
right.
And as soon as I feel like I'm in a place where I'm comfortable and I feel like I got it, something happens and it just brings me back to the drawing board. One of the most things that I do feel is common is guilt and shame. A lot of the victims that I've spoken with do carry around a lot of guilt and shame. And that's one of the first components that we work on.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about that. How do you work through some of that guilt and shame?
Well, it looks different for, each person, right? But we just start with forgiveness of self, right? And just kind of encouraging that person to know that you made the best choice that you could make at that time. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're always going to make that choice. You just made the best choice that you could make at that time. And you have to forgive yourself for that.
Yeah. Often survival.
Exactly. And a lot of times, a lot of victims end up staying in a lot of situations just simply because they feel like, they deserve what's happening to them because of the choices they've made. And just kind of having those conversations about self-worth and getting them to realize that you're not the decision you made and that you can move forward from it. Yeah. So, like Jason mentioned, a lot of our residents do come from out of state. So they get to go to a place where they have a fresh start. They're not identified. When we partner with any community partners, we do let them know that, hey, I'm going to refer someone to you, but at the same time, respect their privacy. And if by chance they share their story with you, let it be their choice and not you asking. And just kind of giving them that autonomy, that space to start over, to reinvent themselves, recreate themselves, and helping them along the way and what that looks like. And it may look different in 2 years than it does today. So just
it's a lifetime journey.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's a cliche saying, but it takes a village, right? It takes the staff that we have and getting them acclimated. It takes these wonderful community resources that we partner with and getting them set up with, mental health services or anything to help with budgeting and just all these learning tools. And it also helps out tremendously that they get to meet new people and see that not everybody is trying to take advantage of them, because most of their life experience has been somebody taking advantage of them. Yeah. And it's pretty awesome to watch the change and them celebrate those little successes of, hey, I saved money in my bank account for the first time ever, and literally learning that people aren't taking a percentage of that, or so it's pretty incredible. But it definitely takes a village to help change some of those narratives and change the thought process.
So what can we as Mentally Strong do for you, as well as people listening, if they're local or maybe not, like What can we as a collective do for human trafficking?
It's a great question. I think, there's a million different answers we can give. There's a million different answers we can say on, if you see somebody and you suspect it, report it, obviously, and things of that nature.
But do you just call 911? I mean, if it's
That's a good start. Yeah. Yeah. I would never recommend going up to somebody and saying, "Hey, I suspect you, come with me." Don't do anything like that. But or if you're out there and you're wondering what to do, you can call organizations, because there are organizations everywhere that work in human trafficking, and say, "Hey, what do I look for in this?" Or I have some concerns. And that's a great way to start as well.
Yeah. And it's not likely somebody giving you a weird sign on the road is probably your neighbor. Or,
Exactly. It's going to be very rare that somebody's going to walk up and hand you a note and say, "I need help," or something along those lines.
Right.
But, really what I always say is just supporting the organizations that work so hard to get people in these situations of trafficking safe. And that can be through donations. It could be through volunteer work. Volunteer work is so important. Those kinds of areas, and just supporting those agencies, because we're the boots on the ground, helping with people. And the tricky part about, especially something like human trafficking or domestic violence, where, everything's confidential, is we're not able to, a lot of the times, give those really sensational stories. Right. And so, it's something that, yes, we see it, we hear the story, we see the changes, and we would love nothing more to shine a camera on them and say, "Tell your story," and we can't do that. And so people, just supporting the agency, supporting the mission that we're doing and the work that we're doing, and knowing that you will never know this person's name or the people that we work with. You'll never really know a lot about their story, but just know that they're getting to a place where their lives are going to be better and they're going to be productive members of the society as well.
Yeah. Awesome. We will have your website link.
Awesome.
You said that, what is the El Paso thing coming for donations?
So Colorado Gives Day.
Okay, yes.
The official day is December 10th. But you can donate now. We're thrilled that for the first time ever, we had an anonymous donor come through and offer a $20,000 match.
So you need to raise $20,000.
So we want to raise $20,000, which would actually be $40,000, right? So we're blessed for that. But if you go to, again, our website, www.bakhitamountainhome.org, trust me, whether you can spell it or not, you're going to get there.
Okay.
I always have to check myself. Did I spell it every single time? And I've been there for almost a year. Or, what we also is awesome that I recommend is we do have social media. So we do have Facebook, Instagram. Get on there. We're constantly posting updates. We're constantly posting, we have our Amazon wish list, which is directly from a resident saying, "Hey, I would really like this," or "I need this." And so we try to, get donations for that. We have the holidays coming up. So anything, volunteering, donations, but you can get all that information on our website or our social media.
Okay.
And can I add to Jason's stance? I think education and prevention. So recently I went to a fundraiser where a survivor shared her story. And one of the key things that stood out to me about her story, she was like, I wasn't mad at the person who was trafficking or my parents or how I got to the situation. I was mad at the person who saw me sneaking out of my house and didn't say anything. I think, just like Jason said, it takes a village.
And these victims are in our communities.
Absolutely.
They're, we always see like these, things, or somebody slipping you a note. That's not how it's happening. They're your neighbors. They're somebody's neighbor.
And that was like the thing that stuck with me the most.
So is there a place to call? Because I think this is way more, if you don't see someone getting actually hit and things like that, you don't know what to call the police about, right? Like, you're just like, but you have a gut feeling that something's going on at your neighbor's house and that this person is not there, or they're there against their will, so would they call like the national trafficking line and kind of get advice on where to go from there? If there's not a solid, I can call 911 about this situation.
Yeah.
So yes, that's one possibility. But I do also know that El Paso County has a task force that's specifically trained to handle cases with human trafficking. So they can call their local law enforcement agency and say, hey, this is what I saw, and report what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be assigned to someone who's trained to look for those things.
I haven't
kind
had
of
much
follow
luck
up.
with that kind of stuff, because as long as if the victim does not, admit
Sure.
that they are a victim,
Sure.
that there's nothing that the police can do.
Yeah, there's scenarios that are always going to happen
Yeah.
like that unfortunately, you can't control. And,
Mm-hmm.
We hope that people reach out. I know I was mentioning statistics earlier, there in Colorado in 2023, there were over 3,100 reports of this. And we know that the numbers are way higher just because people aren't reporting, right? So, it's tricky. It's definitely tricky on some of those areas, but
well, let's dive a little deeper. Is there a way for me to specifically contact this task force? Because we have patients that'll tell us things, right? And it's not enough to, call the police, or they're not willing to
disclose or
or be completely honest. Sure. And they'll tell us, oh, when the police come, I'll lie, right?
Yeah.
So, and then we have a confidentiality thing,
Sure.
but usually we can get them to a place, but like practically, as we have a victim and they're trying to look at their options before they make the decision to disclose and try to get out. What are some other resources we could?
Yeah.
Because one day they'll be where they're supposed to be.
But most of the organizations that are working in this specific field of human trafficking will have resources or literature or anything that, we can get to other organizations for them to give to somebody. If they're just, hey, I'm not ready, there's not going to be a ton. Because again, it's like somebody using drugs and their family saying, you need to get them to stop. If they don't want to stop, right, then it's a whole different can of worms. There's lots, not a ton, but there's definitely a lot of agencies around that, provide that kind of information. Or even Bakhita, get a hold of us and we can give information, or have even a phone call if that's what that person wants. We have a case management team that can talk to them and say, okay, you don't have to tell me your name. You don't have to tell me really much of anything, but here's some of the options that are out there too. And sometimes it takes just talking to somebody that's in the field too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Of course.
And we will definitely have links to
Awesome.
the Bakhita Mountain Home. And you said on your website, there's lots of resources
absolutely
already there.
Yep.
But that they could actually get a phone call with someone and talk to them.
Yeah. There's a form. There's a form that it's, basically says if you're interested in housing or interested in, information. Once they fill it out, it comes directly to me, and then we get it right to our case management team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Final words for our listeners.
Human trafficking is truly it's a community effort, and it starts right in our neighborhood. Mm-hmm. It's the person next door. It's the kid who was fun and outgoing and is now kind of reserved and, not quite acting like themselves. It's a community effort, and it's going to take all of us to have eyes on and being aware of what's going on and building those relationships within our own community to be able to say, hey, what's going on?
Thank you very much. That is beautiful.